Okay, I'm gonna repeat this over and over again. No matter how big your template is, you wanna have a set of pre-routed empty free tracks, okay? You wanna have a set of empty tracks pre-routed there in your template, okay? That's gonna speed up your process a lot, okay? So last week we talked about templates, right? You may have a small template, a big template. You may want to choose the modular approach because it works with you, or you may go with the minimum setup and just having like 10, 16 tracks top for like sketching. But when it comes to composing a cue, it's not like you're always going to use the same instruments, the same orchestral instruments with the percussion that you may have loaded there. You've got some synths there. It's, if you really go for a fresh sound every time you compose, even though you will keep your your sound, you'll still need to load patches that you didn't think you would need when you were building the template. And I'm not even talking about like a very specific epic orchestral percussion instrument. I'm talking about maybe you need to load like string runs with an octatonic scale that you didn't have it loaded there, or you may need like an arpeggio patch that you have from an old library that you aren't using, that you obviously don't have loaded in your template. Okay, so those patches, you know that you have them because you bought the library, you know your library, you know your instruments, but it's just not loaded there. But it would make such a big difference if you could have it. Having loaded all the patches that you have in all your libraries that you bought is just not realistic for having them in your template. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is always having like 30 tracks there, pre-routed, just empty. So you can just grab your patch and load it there, and everything's pre-routed. You may have to reroute the bus, the output for hitting the specific bus, but that's about it. Okay, so super important, no matter how your template is, have a set of, I usually have 32 free tracks because my track will end using like 100 different patches. Most of them I have them loaded, but some of them I'll have to load, and it's really nice having them there. Now, if sometimes while you are composing, you'll be composing these 6-minute cues, you may be working with that cue a couple of days or a week, something like that, and you'll say, wow, this set of tracks that I loaded here, they work really good. I wish I could store or save them somehow. You've got different options, okay? But you can save, you can move them to your template if they are really cool. You can save that contact instance or that play instance, so you can reload it afterwards. You can name it like I don't know, like tuned wooden percussion, okay? And then you can save that instance like this multi, and then you can just load it afterwards for another project. Then you'll have to reroute them again. If you think you're using it often again, then just move it up to your and make it part of your template. Okay, but one thing's important here. If you go like, okay, I'm gonna use this afterwards, this is gonna stick in my template, that's cool. But if that's the case, remember to load 16 more tracks or 32 more tracks, again, empty pre-routed tracks with your contact instance there preloaded, so that in the next queue you've got them available. Okay, so that's it. That makes a big difference, allows you to keep working faster and still being flexible and being able to load new sounds so your sound stays fresh. An orchestra sounds powerful and big when they sound aligned and tuned. Okay, aligned in terms of tempo, so the rhythms are tight, and in tune. With samples, when we are syncostrating, we won't have the tuning problem most of the times, but when it comes to sync, to have everything to sound perfect in tempo and line and tight, then we may find some problems, especially when we are mixing percussion and orchestral samples, because every orchestral sample, like the strings, for example, they've got an attack, right? When they when they start bowing, it takes a couple milliseconds or 5 milliseconds to actually hear the full volume of that note. Whereas when we've got a snare and you hit the snare, it's the attack, it's much faster, it's right there as soon as you hit it. So when we quantize, and this is a very important concept, when we quantize everything, by nature, some instruments will sound a bit later, okay? So we may have the percussion here, and then the strings may sound here, maybe the violins and violas here, the cellos here, and the double basses will come here. And that's a problem, because we want everything, even though we may quantize it, not 100%, things will be a little bit like this. Still, even though we don't quantize it at 100%, we want things to be relatively tight. We don't want that, even if we don't quantize at 100%, to have the double basses always late. So with Cubase, you will come here, and you can do that with most of with Sonar, and with most of the sequencers. You will come here and you'll move. For this patch, every note will be moved minus 6.1 milliseconds. Now, how do we adjust everything so it's tight? You'll have to do this once, and then it'll stay here stored and saved in your template. And now, how do we do that? Because 6 milliseconds is not that much. Okay, so usually you should be fine just using your ear, but then you can do several things that will help you better aligning the different things. So the first thing you can do is very simple. Just solo those two tracks. For example, if you've got, let's come here. Let's go here. Let's see if. Okay, and let's record a double bass and a hi-hat. Okay, and let's come up here and record the hi-hat. Let's just do that, record it, and then we'll come here, we'll select these, we'll open both, we'll already quantize the double bass. Okay, like this. Cool. It's wait a second. It's too tight. Let's give it some randomness here. Okay, cool. And then let's record the hi-hat. Okay. Okay, so here's the hi-hat. Let's again quantize this a little bit. Okay, so let's hear that. I'm guessing the hi-hat is going to sound first, and then the double bass will come later. Let's give it a listen. Now what we could do is, in every time we record the double bass, we could move it a little bit. Now it's coming too soon, like this, like this. Okay, that actually takes a lot of time, and we'll be doing that every time. So the way to do this is instead coming here and get the double bass and moving it some milliseconds. Minus 12, still like minus 20, it's getting there, minus 30 maybe, it's a lot. If we had all the orchestra playing, it'd be harder, so recommendation is soloing the tracks. Now, if you're still having a hard time, a quick tip here is panning different instruments, right? So we would have the hi-hat here and the double bass here, and it'll be much easier for us to put them in sync tempo, like locked in, like tight. So in the mixer, I'm gonna grab double bass. and the hi-hat here. I'm gonna move him. And now clearly we can hear. Let's move it the other way. And now clearly we can hear the hi-hat is still coming a bit earlier. So let's move this a little bit. Now, right? If we go 0, now we can clearly hear how it goes, you know, left, right, and at minus 30 it wasn't still there. Minus 40, not yet. Maybe minus 50. We're getting there. Maybe minus 55. Minus 60 maybe. Yeah. That sounds good. Now again, we would bring this back to 0, back to the center, and hey, that's much better. Let's just, you know, it's not tight. You know, imagine having all the orchestra really tight. And again, we quantized this. We gave it some randomness, so we didn't quantize it at 100%, but still it's got that tightness that we need. Not tight, not good. Minus 60. That's it. See, that's why a template is important, because those things, when we are composing, it's a pain going through those over and over again. So if we've got some tracks pre-configured, routing, delay, or negative delay, so they are in sync, that will definitely help our composing workflow go faster. Okay, let's talk about percussion, because percussion is really a big thing. There are so many different approaches that you can take when it comes to percussion. You can, and it ranges from, you know, just having some percussion that's supporting the, you know, all the orchestral material, either if it's orchestral percussion or more like hybrid synth percussion or epic percussion, but just, you know, adding some support there to the orchestra. And then to the other hand, we could have, like, you know, that, you know, heavy percussion track that definitely goes with the orchestra. But if you get rid of the orchestra, man, that sounds, you know, that sounds powerful. It's like this really busy percussion track. Okay, so, you know, you've got, and definitely we've got a lot of options in between. But let's talk about a little bit about, you know, let's go this side, like how to create that really big thick percussion part. Okay, when it comes to percussion, and when we've got like all the orchestra and we've got a big percussion here, we've got to think about this big percussion, okay, as a second orchestration. Okay, we have to orchestrate that. So when it comes to creating that percussion, it's not as complex as like orchestral orchestration, but we've got to orchestrate that, and we have to apply some of the concepts that we already know about orchestration. We have to, and the most important one would be layers. Okay, we may have 2 percussion layers, we may have 3 percussion, we may have it more like, you know, all the percussion doing the same rhythm. But we've got to think about layers the same way that we think when we are orchestrating. We have to think about balance the same way that we think when we are orchestrating. We are arranging. Okay, so the same concept that we would apply here, we have to apply them here. Not to describe them here, because, you know, that would be another whole course. But that if you want this to sound really good, we will need to have some at the high end. We will need some the bottom to create some support. Maybe for the big hits we need everyone there. We may need some snares to give that effect, and also we need some toms for like the mid that gives like the pack, and we also need some like epic big hits that gives like the reverb type of sound, and also maybe a bummer down here that gives like the big lot bottom end. And so those are we may want to add the timpani, which will help sort of blend that heat with the orchestral, with maybe the orchestra is also giving that a loud heat there, and we want to go together, and we don't want like orchestra here and percussion here. We want them to go hand by hand, and the timpani, remember that in the orchestra we've got like a blender type of instruments, right? We've got the horns, which will help blending the all the woodwinds and brass and the strings, right? There's an instrument that works good. It's like a brass instrument that works really good with the woodwinds, but also with the strings. We've got the clarinet, which is like an instrument that helps putting together like the woods and the brass. We've got the violas within the strings family, which is an instrument that doesn't stand out that much, but helps putting together the violins and the cellos, right? When it comes to percussion, we've got some of those instruments. For example, the timpani is one very orchestral instrument that helps the orchestra sound orchestral, right? If we add that in our percussion track, it'll help putting together that maybe epic percussion that's non-orchestral drums, etc., and sort of blending that with the orchestra. Okay, so that's what we were talking about. Okay, so when it comes to creating that really powerful, big, thick, heavy sounding percussion track, we have to take those orchestration concepts that we apply when we are arranging for orchestra. We have to apply them the same way, layering, balance, etc., with percussion. Okay, that's important. Good choices when it comes to orchestrating an percussion part. Good sounds, it's very important for sure, but it's even more important good choices when it comes to orchestrating that part. Okay, and loops. Let's briefly discuss. Have a discussion about loops. Do we really have to use loops? Same concept that when we said, similar concept when we talked about using ensemble patches. Well, the loops is a loop is something that you'll press one key and you've got that really awesome sounding loop. Is it cool to use loops? It is cool to use. I mean, it's good. I personally sometimes I may use loops. Don't that much these days. It just the more used you are to writing your own percussion parts, the faster you'll be at it. So a loop, it's there's some temptation, right? When it comes to using a loop, it just sounds so nice, so thick, so powerful, right there. In the other hand, though, what are we missing? Well, yeah, flexibility. So it's totally fine using loops. Now we are losing flexibility. There are some loops, some libraries that will come with different loops, with versions of the same loop. So we've got some flexibility there. If we are in a race and we need to have that track down real quick, well, we may use a loop. Now, if we are writing a very specific language, you are giving that that soundtrack or that track, you're using your language and you want something that sounds unique, I wouldn't recommend using loops, because a loop is something that someone else can use, and there aren't that many libraries. Well, yes, there are lots of libraries, but if you are a composer, you can recognize most of them. So if you're writing for a library music or royalty-free music, then it's you can use loops. But if you're working for a movie, it'd be a better idea to build your own percussion parts. So we've mentioned that when it comes to percussion, that percussion part, we've got to apply the same orchestration and arranging techniques and concepts that we know and that we use when we are orchestrating for orchestra. So we'll have to think about balance. We've got to think as well about how to distribute the different musical ideas, so the different layers. We've got to think about penning as well, and we've got to think about range. Okay, high to low. So this is just an example of a percussion part. So let's take a quick listen, just a few seconds, first with the orchestra and then with the rest, or then just percussion. So let's take a listen just to the percussion. So now let's take a listen to the high beat low percussion and then the sub bomb. Let's take a listen to this part. Let's look at these faders here, and then we'll listen them independently. So here we go. So first of all, I would like to mention how important this is, the sub bomb. Let's take a listen to this one just for a second. Right? Now, what when the percussion comes in, it is cool, but when it comes in with this one, it's just so much better. Okay, with it gives it that bottom end that the percussion needs. Okay, but this one, by the way, is Drums of War sub bomb. Okay, it works great, but there are many others. Now let's see how we build this part. So when it comes to percussion, we've got the orchestral percussion is up here. And then we've got, in my case, is tone hammer, epic frame drum. And so this is the same patch, but I just separated it high, mids, and lows so I could route it afterwards. Okay, so those are the 32 tracks that I talk about, that pre-routed tracks that are separated from my template. Okay, so basically what we've got is the epic frame drum, which will carry most of the weight of this percussion part. But then we also have, let's actually see with Cubase, you've got this thing where you can show only tracks with data at the cursor position, right? Let's see what we've got here at this point. So we are interested about these tracks down here, okay? The epic frame drum, high, mid, low, and then we've got some the sub bomb here. We've got a hi-hat going on here, and some like small bells here. This is small epic percussion, tone hammer, ADO these days. So let's take a look. So the basis of this percussion bed happens here in the epic frame drums, highs and lows. Okay, we've got the highs and the lows. And together they go like this. So the highs here and up here, and the lows, okay? So as you can see, we've got two musical ideas, and they are clearly separated in range, so that makes it easier to separate those. Now the panning for the low frame drum is sort of in the center. Now the high frame drum, it's a little bit to the left, and to compensate, we are adding the small epic percussion, which will do something similar to what the high frame drums are doing, but it'll compensate that higher range in the right side. So let's just hear for a second. Okay, basically what I did here, this is the sheep bell patch from epic, small epic percussion. It's on hammer, it's ADO these days, and as you can see, I moved it to the right a little bit. Okay, usually it sounds here, like sort of center, kind of a spread sound, but I moved it here. It's got some information in the beat left, but definitely it's got more weight in the right side, which works so well with the high epic frame drums, which got more weight in the left side. Finally, we've got two more elements. Okay, we've got one hi-hat, which is here. My recommendation when it comes to recording fast passages like this one is bringing down the tempo and recording, and then just bringing up the tempo again. Or I quantize. When I quantize, usually I don't go 100%. I randomize a little bit. And finally, what I'm doing is I'm copying the very same rhythm that the hi-hat's playing, and I've got a frame drum that's doing the same thing. Now, this may not be very realistic in terms of sound. Now, it makes the percussion bed sound very contemporary. Here's the frame drum. And with the hi-hat, it goes like this. And finally, we've got the sub bomb that comes here and there. You can see it's this one here. Let's just merge it. Okay, and again, let's hear it all together. So we've got the drums with the hi-hat, the small big percussion that sort of compensates to the right side with the high frame drum to the left, and then this frame drum that goes with the hi-hat plus the low frame drum, and it goes like this. Okay, let's see them all together. Okay, and now in here, if we add some, some staccato strings, low string staccatos, high string staccatos, and maybe some long violin lines and some low horn stuff like that, then you get sort of the Jason Bourne type of sound. These are the low strings. Oops. You can see them all together. Okay, let's talk for a moment about ensemble patches. When do we have to use them? Why are they useful? When not to use them? Okay, and why are we talking about ensemble patches? Especially when we usually will think, okay, I've learned orchestration, know how to orchestrate, and hey, the ensemble patches, they don't make that much sense to me because they don't give me flexibility. Right? I've got first of all, what's an ensemble patch? An ensemble patch is like when you load strings patch or brass or woods, and you've got everything from the low basses to the violins, just in one patch. So again, sometimes you'll say it doesn't make that much sense to me because it doesn't give me flexibility. I want to have separated violins 1, violins 2, violas, etc. That gives me much more flexibility. Well, yes. That's right. What's about the ensemble patches? Well, they've got something that's unique to them, which is that sound, like that ensemble type of patch. If we wanna get that ensemble type of feel, sure we can get that. We can achieve that by using violins 1, 2 violas, etc. it just is gonna be harder. It's gonna take more time, that's for sure. But I'm talking about that 5% of when you load different patches and you have them playing together, it'll sound almost there is 95%, but it's not like having them playing at the same time. So the ensemble patches, they've got that thing. Most of them got recorded with all the strings, sitting there, or with all the brass instruments sitting there. So in a way, you can feel how you've got all those 60 players in the same room at the same time, which is a cool thing. And when you just play that chord with two hands in a strings ensemble patch, all of a sudden you hear that that strings ensemble sound. Okay, what's that's what we get. In the other hand, though, well, we will lose definition. If we want to go for a smaller, intimate, with more definition type of sound, we don't want to use those. But for simple textures where we just want some string chords, or if we are loading strings ensemble patch staccato notes, those usually sound very powerful, and we have to take advantage of them. Okay, that doesn't mean that we have to use them all the time, but just make sure, just remember that they are there, and they've got a very specific characteristic ensemble type of sound. We want to use them. Okay, we want to be careful not to lose definition, because here's the thing: when we are loading from violins 1 up to double basses, we can make sure that the violins 1 sound maybe a little bit more to the left, and the cellos, they've got a really good, nice definition in that right mid right side, and we don't have that control with ensemble patches. So once we understand the difference between the ensemble patches and loading section patches, and when to use one type of patch or the other, we've got a third option here, right? Which is go hybrid, meaning I can use an ensemble patch, but then I can record on top of that ensemble patch. I can record maybe some sections. Okay, I could use a brass patch, but I want to have the trumpets recording on top of that, just to give it some extra definition for the lead note maybe. Or I can have the strings ensemble and I can record maybe the violin 1 and the cello, to just open the mix a little bit more, and maybe the double basses, because I've got this nice low sounding bass patch and I want to give it some extra bottom end. Or maybe because here's the other thing: with ensemble patches, we cannot export afterwards through a bus like highs and lows. So if I'm recording an ensemble patch and then I'm recording violins and cellos, and then the double basses underneath it, just to give it some extra bottom end, then I can export that through a independent bus, and I can maybe make sure that when I'm mixing, I'm giving the right level for the bass, or we've got more control for sure, right? Okay, so remember, we've got three options. We can use ensemble patches. They've got a unique thing, which is they've got an ensemble type of sound. If we are going for a smaller sound, we want to have control and definition over all the spectrum, we will have to use, and we will be using most of the times, section patches. That's what we are using most of the time, but we don't have to forget about ensemble patches and how powerful are them. And as a third option, we can use something in between, something hybrid, right? We can use an ensemble patch and layer on top of that some instruments, some instruments like a trumpet, or some sections like violins 1 or trumpets section. Okay, and sure, we may think, okay, but if I'm going for that more realistic or orchestral type of sound, if I'm using an ensemble patch and on top of that I'm recording the violins and the cellos, it's the balance, how are we dealing with realistic balance? Okay, the answer is it is not going to sound like orchestral, like John Williams, Michael Giacchino, Lost type of thing. It's not going to sound that realistic. It's going to sound cinematic though, okay? It's going to sound like the cinematic sound that we are used to these days, okay? Which is this, orchestral sound, but it's expanded, okay? It goes beyond the orchestral sound. Okay, so ensemble patches for getting that ensemble type of feel. If we want independence, definition, flexibility, still using independent section patches. But we have the third option, which is mixing both approaches and going hybrid, having ensemble and layering some section patches. Okay, quick tip on how to record strings. We've mentioned that ensemble patches will have something that they've got a quality, unique quality that the section patches don't have, which is that sound of the whole ensemble playing in the same room at the same time. Okay, so when we grab the strings and we play them all together, like okay, that already sounds good. And they've got this them all playing at the same room sort of feel, which doesn't happen that easily when we record one by one. So there's a quick trick when it comes to recording the strings, and it's this type of slow harmonies with long notes, which is recording the strings with the strings ensemble pads, and then on top recording the violins, cello, and double basses. Okay, violins and cellos because it's giving left and right, and those are the instruments, the sections within the string ensemble that they sound with a more characteristic tone color, and also because of the panning. Okay, so that helps giving definition to the different layers within the strings section, and also they open the mix a little bit, and also they give to the strings ensemble a timbre and some inner sort of variation that doesn't happen if you're recording the whole ensemble. Okay, but by having the whole ensemble there, it's providing that ensemble type of sound. Okay, so let's see that. Let's see how we would do that. Okay, so let's. So let's come here and let's record something. What I'll do is generally I'll use both hands, and then I'll record the expression. If I had a breath controller, I could do the whole thing in one pass. Okay. So that's our recording right here, and let's go with expression with dynamics. Very simple now. Okay, here we go. Let's see the pedal, because I don't sustain. Let's get rid of the, which I used while I was recording, but I don't need it really. So let's make sure that they're here. Right, something like that. And as you can see, the notes are overlapping a little bit, maybe a bit too much, this one here. But they are overlapping because the sustain strings, usually they've got a slower attack, and we need them to overlap so we don't get that drop. Let's hear this real quick. See, it's a bit too early. Okay, so that's our thing here. Let's get rid of this one, and we'll call this so we've got a bit more space here. So that's it. Now what we would do is we will record the violin one on top of that. Okay, so let's do that, and then we'll record the cello as well, or the cello, and we will record the double bass for providing that extra bottom end and having some control there. So let's see all those tracks, okay, and then we'll choose which one. Now we are recording with the violin, and basically we're just layering the upper lane here. So here we go. Okay, just remember. Okay, this is the violin, right? It sounds a little bit more to the left, and it's going to give a little bit more of definition to that line. Okay, here's our line. Let's do the same with the cello. Let's select the cello here. Okay, cello actually playing in a, the whole string ensemble, they're playing in a sort of higher register. So here we go. You know what we could do here actually is bringing this down an octave, right? So this will actually stay up here, and this will stay here, but then we will bring this down an octave. Okay, so they'll go down an octave, and the cellos or the basses will play the bass in octaves, and the cellos will stay there, or the other way around. So this is the cello that we recorded. It's a C, and then go down to C. Okay, that'll sound good. Let's hear it now. Okay, yeah. And then we'll record the double basses, just providing with so lower end, and we'll start here. Okay, adding that extra bottom end towards the end. So we've got it. Let's give it a listen. Let's bring these guys here. Exactly, yeah. Okay, so it's just with a tiny bit of reverb for the higher strings. That's we already have this. Okay, trumpets and brass in general. Let's address a common problem when it comes to producing an orchestral mock-up, and often a common mistake that we will do when it comes to trumpets and brass. Okay, let's stop here for a minute and let's think what we learned in orchestration when we studied, right? The first thing we learned about trumpets is that Trumpet's one of the loudest instruments in the orchestra. It's the only instrument able to, to manage, when you've got the orchestra playing tutti, the trumpet, they can still play louder and cut through and project above the orchestra playing tutti, whereas a flute, for example, wouldn't be able to, right? So it is an instrument with a lot of projection power. Okay. So if when you've got all the orchestra playing tutti fortissimo, and you've got 3 trumpets that will come in and will go for the climatic moment, right? And you can still hear those trumpets. When you are orchestrating a brass hit, something like ras, right? And you want that to sound how we are used to hear it in the soundtrack, we can just have the trumpets or the trumpets, the trombones. The first problem that we will find is that we will load the trumpet. It's a new library that we bought. It sounds outstanding, and then we will load the trumpets here. Where is it? Like we may even use the ensemble trumpets, so just to thicken the sound a little bit. Or if we go realistic, we will load the solo trumpets, short notes, and we'll go for, right? And we may have something here. And we recorded that. Or we could even go with a chord. No. Yeah. And we're like, this part doesn't sound good. And when we hear that, well, we just record it, just working with the arrangement. The first thing that we will do is we'll bring it down in volume, right? We'll just bring the expression down or the volume down in the mixer. They will sound thin. Let's just give it a try. Right, let's record that, and since it doesn't quite sound good, let's bring down the expression. That's a very common thing to do. Even a little bit more, not convincing. Okay, and we're like, it sounds okay, and we may leave it there. All right, just contact this. Okay, and we're like, yeah, it's okay. Now we are talking. But the thing is, that's not how the trumpets sound. The trumpet, they should sound at the right level. If the trumpet doesn't fit the arrangement, it's because they need some support. Okay, especially with samples, because with samples we've got the trumpets. They recorded different dynamic layers, and in every dynamic layer they will have, the piano will sound softer, and the fortissimo, it'll sound more brassy. Okay, so in real life they can play fortissimo but still sort of make the sound a bit softer in a way, even though it's when they play forte it'll sound more brassy. So what we've got missing here, and especially with samples, is everything else. If we want the trumpets doing that pa-pa-pam moment, we will need the trombones and maybe some horns for the third beat, pa-pa-pam, and they're coming in the horns, the timpani, some percussion, maybe the strings there as well, and but maybe for that pa-pa-pam, with having all the orchestra, you may want to bring in the bassoons if you want to soften the brass sound, or not if you want the brass to sound more like brass. Okay, so that's what's happening here. And let's see what instruments we've got here real quick. We've got the trumpets here mixed with some mute short trumpets as well, but also we've got the trombones. Okay, we've got the timpani helping, we've got a snare, we've got some strings as well helping that hit, we've got the violins, violas and cellos helping there as well. We've got a tam-tam for the last hit, a sub-bomb as well, you can see it here. Let's just see this bigger. Okay, so the tam-tam's here, sub-bomb, we can see it here. Snares, the tam-tam comes here, the snares, the timpani. This is a timpani swell. Let's take this a listen. The cellos reinforcing here as well as the rest of the strings. So that all together really helps the thing. What else am I missing here? The tam-tam, the sub bomb. So we've got the trumpets, which when I was composing was what I had in mind, what I wanted, that pa-pa-pam. I was looking for this more barbaric type of sound, so I brought the trumpets in a register that's not that common. Usually we would have the trumpets up here like pa-pa-pam, but we brought them down in a register that when they play forte, they've got this more barbaric sound. But this trumpet hit needed to be orchestrated. So we added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more tracks. So we've got like 4 or 5 more percussion. We've got the trombones, we've got the strings helping, and we could orchestrate this farther. But with those, we did the trick. These days, cinematic orchestral sound will be using horns all the time. So you want to have a patch that sounds great in every range, okay? In the lowest or the highest. Or you can play low, dark chords like or mix some harmonies maybe with choir. But in most of your cinematic cues, you'll need big horns. I use the Cine Horns 12 horns patch for this one. I'm cheating a little bit here. I'm adding just a tiny bit of solo horn, not that much really, you'll see, and the trombone solo, which, you know, just helps the mid-low end. But again, you can see the volume is much lower. This one is 9 dBs lower, so you can barely hear it. You can mute it. It's there, but and so for the solo horn, it helps keep up here. It just gives it some that extra definition that you need when you go higher. You can see how even though this one it's 11 dBs lower than this one, it sounds a bit softer here. But when you go up, it picks up the volume, which is a range that you usually won't use that much. Usually you will. But sometimes it's rare, but you may use it. Okay, so this one is one that I use it a lot, and it allows me to play like fast lanes. Okay, and what other horns do I have? Well, this is my set of horns. I will have some solo horns, short and long, some 2 horns patch, some 6 horn patch, short and longs again, and 12 horn patches, which this one is very similar to the one that we. But hey, it's just, you know, that one is the big one, and here's all the different articulations that I may need. But basically, I've got short and long, short and long, short and longs for solo 2, 6, and 12. Okay, and then I've got it routed to brass short, brass long, which my basis in terms of my stems in terms of brass are just shorts and longs. I don't have like highs and lows as I do have for the strings. So I find very useful having like a solo horn. It just sometimes when you are playing like 3-part or 4-part harmony, if you are reaching for that more realistic orchestral sound, it just is going to make it sound so much more realistic having a solo horn, because you are playing 3 notes, you are getting 3 or 4 notes, you are getting. So again, here I'm using Cinebrass, and what I like about it is that you got the key switches here, so short, a bit longer, and then this will allow you to do stuff like as you can see, there are some key switches here. It may take a little bit of practice getting used to your specific instrument, your specific patch. I'm very used to this one horn patch with these specific articulations. It's very common in cine samples, having short, mids, and the longer. You can also choose with cine samples, you can choose to, instead of using key switches, using velocity, and if you press it soft, then it'll be short, and if you play it louder, then it'll trigger a longer. I'll show you in a minute, but basically, as you can see, I trigger different articulations within the same patch using key switches. So it's shorter staccato and a bit longer staccato. Okay, twice. So shorter staccato, longer staccato, twice. Pum pum. So pum pum, pum pum. Longer here. Pum pum. Longer, and then pum pum pum. With 2 shorter. Then the shortest staccatos, and then the longer ones. I could have chosen here, instead of going. I could have chosen going with long notes. But then I would have to write some expression here. Okay, and I would have to work on that one a little bit. But yeah, so again, cine samples, they instead of you going like, you can come here, mapping, and instead of using the key switches, you can choose the velocity map, and then if you go softer, it'll be short, and if you go louder, it'll be longer. Right, so, and then you'll control the dynamic piano or forte with modulation. It's sort of cool. You have to get used to it. I got more used to like key switches. So then again, I've got the same thing with so solos, right? So solos short, which is like short articulations, and then longs, and basically I've got 2 different patches here. One of them allows me to play like legatos, and the other one, which is polylegatos, allows me to play legatos with chords, which means it will play the inner line, also legato like. And finally, I've got the solo legato. They've got with cine samples. They've got the core, and the pro. With the core, they've got a solo legato horn that sounds softer, and it's beautiful. It's just beautiful, which this character doesn't have, like the solo mono legato in the pro version, which you can play softer, but it's just not the same. But they just sound beautiful when you have them playing at the same time. And then this one. They just sound beautiful. Right? So it's good to have them. They just are different in character. And then so I've got the same thing basically for the two. The two sound beautiful when you are playing like the two notes. And there's the six horn. They sound astonishing. Both the legatos and the articulation. And finally the 12th horn, just the more when you want to go really like epic, like when you want to go real epic. And then we would write some automation, right? So that's it for cinematic music. You want to have some horns that sound epic, sound really good in different ranges, different articulations. And for realistic sounding orchestral sound, you want to have as many articulations and horn sizes as possible. Okay, it doesn't happen that much with other sections like trumpets, because horns you can go from 2-3 to 12, and that's a big range in terms of numbers. When it comes to trombone, you'll usually have 3. If you've got 4, you'll have a bass trombone, which you can have loaded, but it doesn't change as much as with horns. Another syncestration tip: use tremolo strings as much as you can. Okay, that doesn't mean that you have to use them all the time, but tremolo strings sound really good with samples, and compared to sustained strings, you'll have a harder time really making the sustained strings to sound good, whereas the tremolo strings, they sound outstanding. Again, it's one of those performance type of patches. They are playing something there, they're performing, and that helps the sample sound better than just like those static long notes. So I'll show you some examples. Let's come here, for example, and let's just see the tracks that we are using in this specific moment. Let's see them. So let's see a quick example here. Hey, we could have used just like long sustained strings here, like this, and it would have sounded good as well. But with samples it happens to be easier to record tremolo strings, and so when you are using them, they'll sound more realistic. Right? It is just another orchestration tool technique we've got available. We didn't have to use it all the time, it's just there, but it happens that with samples works really good. Let's see another example here. Very simple texture here. We've got the a piano with a lot of delay, a synth, and the strings, some long notes here and there. We had some low strings first coming in, we had a horn, a simple horn melody motif coming in first, and then this horn sounds beautiful. It's the Cinesamples Cinebrass solo horn, the core library, the core Cinebrass. Then in the Pro version of this library, they've got the solo horn again, but in the core version, it's got a softer. It sounds beautiful. The Pro sounds a little bit, it's just different. If you go for the intimate, softer tone, here you go. It's just beautiful, especially the transitions. They nailed it. Anyway, back here, so it's the horns and then the strings are coming in. Again, beautiful. And another example here. Okay, you'll have plenty of string patches in your template. The string section usually will be the section with more patches, both because it's the most important family in the orchestra and also in cinematic orchestral, and also because of the big range of articulations that they've got available. But no matter how many string patches you've got loaded, you want to have one in particular that you'll be using a lot. And I'm talking about low staccato strings. You want to have a low staccato string patch that sounds really good. And when I talk about low staccato strings, I'm talking about having a patch that combines double basses and cellos. Okay, because sometimes, and most of the times, but often you will have the cellos and double basses doing the same thing. So it's good to have them grouped in one patch. And also there will be other times where you'll have the cellos and double basses playing at the same time, maybe not the same exact notes in octaves, but they'll be playing at the same time. They may be playing open low chords, okay? And so, let me grab, okay. I call those like power low strings, staccato strings. Is this track here, and so you can build this easily. You just have to put the double basses and the cellos and loading them, and then you got it. The only problem that you may have is that at some point the double basses will start overlapping with the cellos, which in contact you could get rid of this part here with the cellos, or you can sort of bring down the volume of the cellos. If you are a bit of a techie and you know your way with contact, you can do that. Okay, I'll show how I built mine. Mine is a combination of Albion and Symphobia low staccato strings, and also I added a Elias scoring strings cellos and Spitfire double basses, and I balanced them all, and I got this sound. Okay, and so they are, let's see what we've got here. So actually they don't include the double basses the Spitfire double basses. So again, it's Symphobia and Albion. Albion is the lowest staccato. Symphobia goes all the way up, but what I did is in contact, basically, if you come here, not group editor, mapping editor, right? You could get rid of the highest notes. So that's what I did. Just basically selected what I didn't want in this patch, and I just deleted those zones. You have to make sure that you've got selected edit all groups to do so. You don't really have to delete those, but I just wanted to have this starting with double basses and cellos going up to the highest register, and I didn't want to have like violas and violins. So basically here there's a cool thing about Albion. Spitfire records their libraries in Air Studios. It's a good studio with a very nice reverb decay, and everything that you record in there sounds very big. Plus the lowest strings in Albion and the Spitfire strings library, they sound very beautiful in the low end. So it's a big sound what we've got here in these pads. We can. It sounds great. It does. It doesn't sound. So the other two pads in Symphobia will add some, aggressiveness and power to this. It's got more right. It's got more like it's got more like. Symphobia will add a sort of more aggressive sound to the arco, like bum bum bum, like. Which Albion doesn't have, but it sounds bigger. And finally, well, you know how the LA scoring string cello sound. This is the spiccato pad. That gives that bite to the whole thing. So if we had just like Albion, right, and Symphobia as the. So Albion sounds like this, and then if we add Symphobia, you get a bit more aggressive, and finally with LA scoring strings, you've got that bite. Even when you play it soft, it sounds beautiful. So that's it. You don't have to use the very same one. You can create your own. Just whenever you hear some low strings that you like, just grab that track, import it in your sequencer, and try to replicate the same sound. Definitely with one library, you'll get one sound. When you combine different libraries, then you can start being creative and sort of modulate by leveling different patches. You can modulate the sound that you want to create. You don't have to go the exact same way. You don't have to have three patches. You could just load the double bass and the cellos, and that's it. And you've got many libraries. You've got Berlin strings. You've got Spitfire, cinematic strings, Hollywood strings, Cine strings. You can use just the strings of one library, or you can mix. You've got to be a little bit careful when you are. It's not about the stacking all the the string libraries that you've got. Otherwise, it won't sound realistic. Okay, when we are mixing different libraries, we are giving them different. See, here at the end of the day, we've got two libraries. So two libraries at the same time. It's Symphobia and Albion. So it's going to sound bigger than it is. So it's not realistic. And then with the LA scoring strings, it's just the cello section there, adding just a little bit of definition, but not adding like many more instruments really. Whenever you have a library that allows you to play like repeated notes, like LA scoring strings, like holding the pedal, that will trigger staccato notes with a pattern. With LA scoring strings for the staccato and spiccato patches, you will set up a pattern, and every time you hold the pedal, if you hold a chord or a note, it'll trigger that pattern with those staccatos or spiccato notes. Spitfire strings, they've got this, they call them measured tremolo, right? And you'll be able to when you hold one note, it'll trigger up to 5 notes. Okay. And right, and so it just makes it very convincing. It works both for staccatos or for if you hold the chord interval over the note, it'll trigger the up to 5 notes. Okay, it is very useful and makes it sound very realistic. It's got many uses that you can, or you could record something like. When it comes to fast strings, and we are talking about this type of phrases like runs, fast phrases, we've got this problem, right? Which is we cannot use staccato patches, we cannot use legatos most of the times. We cannot use like sustained long notes type of patch. We cannot use staccato patches because they sound too perfect, too precise, and when we've got like in a string section like violins 1, 2, and violas maybe performing those string runs, they aren't able to play the same notes at the same time. So it'll be always an not perfectly in sync, out of time thing that's gonna make it sound like a string run. And if we are using a staccato, it's going to sound too perfect. We cannot use long notes either, because the attack of those notes in our long note samples, it's not fast enough for it to sound good, right? And most of the times we won't be able to use legatos because of the transition that's recorded in between notes for the legato patches won't be fast enough for us to perform fast phrases. Now the libraries are becoming better these days, and there'll be some libraries that will manage to play nicely when we are playing fast lines. Hollywood String is really good at that. Okay, but still, it's hard when you are playing like fast runs for them to sound realistic. So I've got two approaches when it comes to fast runs. If I really want to sound very realistic, what I'll do is I'll use these orchestral tools, orchestral string runs library. It's got this violins runs builder, which will come with pre-recorded figures, right? And then you can have 3 notes up, 3 notes down, and then you can have like a triple, like a pop, right? Arpeggio type of figure, and like stuff like that, right? Or you can have, so you can have something like, right? You can do some stuff like that, and then you will choose this scale. You can see how I'm changing here the scale. So I'm choosing E flat major, C minor, because this is the key for this cue. So I wrote this line and it sounds like this, and look here and also here, and you'll see how it's key switching, right, from this one to this one. Okay, and now this, when you put this in context, it sounds like this. So that would be one approach. The other approach, well, actually, before showing you the second option when it comes to writing fast string melodies, if you were to use staccatos for writing like a fast line, choose a not too short staccato. There are libraries that will come with different types of staccatos. Cinesamples, Cinestrings is one example where you'll have like a short, medium, and long staccato. And that will allow you to write those fast phrases, but still not having the notes like too separated, too perfect. Here's an example. This is a viola. Right, so this is Cinesamples, and with the you can see this is velocity, and with the velocity you can control the articulation. Okay, so those are longer staccatos. This is so those are sustained notes. Those are long staccatos. Those are back long notes, And so what I did here is using long staccatos, but still making sure that the notes were short, so it would cut the length of the staccato. If we were to move them and make them longer, so those here are sustained notes, those as well. So those here with the higher velocity are, and those are the longer staccatos. Those are the mid staccatos with the lower velocity, and those back here, long notes. And it'll sound like this. So instead of using like super short staccatos, let's say, we don't want them to be that short, or like those are the mid staccatos, and those are the longer staccatos. You can still play a little bit with longer staccatos. You could make them shorter. We will be losing a little bit of the decay, the natural decay of the note, but it's just different, right? Instead of a bit longer, and it would sound like this. Okay, so the other option, if you're using pre-recorded figures that you can put together to sort of build your runs, would be using a combination of a staccato and tremolo notes. The tremolo, it's got this thing where it doesn't sound perfect like a legato, or it doesn't sound perfect like the staccato, but it's got a faster attack which the legato, the sustain note doesn't have. And it would go like this. We would select an staccato patch, not too short of an staccato patch, and I'm gonna use the Cine samples. Right, this is a longer staccato. Or maybe this one. And the idea here is that usually you will have a hard time to play this fast enough, so the idea would be to bring down the tempo quite a bit here. Like at 40. Then we would record the phrase. Okay, we would write the phrase. We would bring up the tempo. You could maybe have the dynamics. Then we would copy this line to tremolos. And let's work on this line for a second. Weeds already start sounding a bit better. We'll record a little bit of expression and modulation here. Let's get this here. Let's just use mouse here because it goes very fast. And we'll follow. Yepa. Okay, and same thing here. Maybe a little bit too much. Let's compress expression. Okay, let's compress modulation as well. And then let's bring this up. Okay, yeah. Cool. Maybe we can sort of make it a little bit more organic by not having straight lines. The ending's quite convincing. We could definitely do a better job here. Let's listen this once again. Not bad. Maybe we should bring those up a little bit in dynamic. Yeah. Cool. And now let's put these two together. So we've got the staccatos as well here. Let's hear the staccatos one more time. And now it's a matter of mixing and leveling them and making sure they blend together. Let's see, we may need to bring the expression down a little bit in this one. Let's unsolo this one and not bad. If we had something like this. Okay, and we gave that. Right, and maybe but it would need a little bit of tweaking, but it's almost there. It's maybe a bit too loud at the beginning. You could bring it down in volume, but that'd be the other way, mixing staccato, not too short of a staccato, and tremolo samples. In the last video we talked about timpani, right? The timpani, use it all the time. The timpani is that percussion instrument that makes the orchestra sounds like an orchestra, okay? Use the timpani. You need to have a really good sounding timpani, okay? My experience, and this may change in the future, but the best ever sounding timpani is the Speedfire percussion library. That timpani is just outstanding, right? When you've got a track that it's like missing something, it's just not quite there. Just add a timpani, you know, that timpani is going to make it sound. It's going to give it what it needs. That doesn't mean obviously that if your arrangement is wrong, it's poorly arranged, the timpani is gonna fix it. But a timpani, it's a very important part of the orchestra, and you may say, yes, obviously, I know, but sometimes we just forget about it, okay? So this is just a reminder. So best timpani ever, in my experience, Speedfire, the timpani, that orchestral percussion library that they've got. Best bang for the buck, I would say the East-West percussion library, the East-West Quantum Leap Orchestra, the percussion part of it. The timpani, the percussion, it sounds very decent in that library. The timpani especially, oh, it's unbelievable for that library how good that timpani sounds. Okay, so use the timpani for like regular hits, use the timpani for rolls, for connecting section, like, you know, crescendos, like piano to forte, like ras roll, or use the timpani for like a very subtle role, like for creating that like bottom low end with maybe with the tremolo, double basses and cellos. Use the timpani. It's gonna help your tracks a lot, and it's going to help a lot blending, putting together, as we said, the in other videos, the orchestral with the percussive part, especially if it's like hybrid non-orchestral type of percussion. Okay, timpani, great friend to have in your orchestral palette. And the big question, how to blend the orchestral part with all the percussion part, especially when it is non-orchestral or percussive synth part. For a simple answer, and we've discussed that in some other videos, just blend some orchestral percussion instruments within your percussion track, especially if you are using synth or if you are using synth percussion, like it's not acoustic at all. Just blend some acoustic instruments there. That's gonna help a lot. So if you're having this synth or a couple of synth percussion tracks, you may also blend some taikos there. You'll bring in there some, you know, some acoustic sound, and also you may blend the taikos with like crankcasas and timpani maybe, and that's gonna, you know, that's gonna connect the synth with the acoustic and with the orchestral with the rest of non-percussion orchestral instruments. Okay, so very simple, but keep that in mind because it's as simple as it sounds, but it's so important, and most of the times we forget about it. And we've got this, we load that loop that sounds great, and then we've got the orchestra that we orchestrate ourselves. So it's got nothing to do. It's our, you know, orchestral thing here and the percussion loop. Okay, it's not, it maybe doesn't even work rhythmically, right? We need to musically do something that connects them. And it's not about, again, how many times we've said that, it's not about mixing, it's not about mastering, it's not about sound, it's about arranging, right? So do you want them to sound together? Do something that, you know, they have to do something together. Maybe some of the like the downbeats or some of the rhythm itself, it's got to be something that connects them. Okay, and on top of that, if you are using some orchestral instruments that already we are used to hear within the orchestra, the timpani, the snare, the cymbal roll, stuff like that, we are so used to hear those in the orchestra. If we include them in our synth percussion or epic percussion, it's gonna help putting them together. It's simple. That sometimes I forget most of the times, so it's good to have that reminder there. And another one, similar to that problem, how to blend the orchestra with like synth percussion. Choirs, right? We are using choirs and they don't quite, yes, it's there, but they don't sound thick. They don't, you know, blend them with, not with horns, with brass. Blend the choirs with brass, or blend them, do the same thing. You want, if the choirs are doing a line or like harmonic line, you want to have someone in the orchestra, some section in the orchestra going with them. Not all the times, right? Sometimes you've got you want the choirs to go separate, and you've got a library that maybe it's like pronouncing some syllables or some phrases or something, and it sounds thick already and it's good, and you don't want to blend them in the orchestra, but most of the times you want. And sometimes maybe they are doing like balls, like A's or O's, stuff like that, but they don't, it's like if you bring up the volume too much, they sound too loud, but they don't blend with the orchestra. You bring them down, they don't have the same problem with the orchestra. Have someone playing with them. Horns, if you've got this like very soft orchestral thing and you want some choirs with some harmonies there, it's just not working, just like blend the horns in there. Just have the horns, maybe just load the solo horn, long notes, and play, 3 horns or 4 horns, right, 4-part harmony with the choir. It's going to sound beautiful. You don't even need to hear the horns. Just make sure that they're there supporting and going with the choirs, right? That's beautiful. Higher choirs like sopranos, some flutes there, right? And then the rest of the orchestra. Very important thing. Sometimes Lord of the Rings, it's all about that. You may want to check out the Lord of the Rings symphony. where you can find that in YouTube, or you can buy the DVD. It's a beautiful symphony, and especially beautiful how they filmed, all the shooting, the filming of the symphony, and you can hear those big choirs with the trombones and sometimes with the horns. Beautiful there. So don't forget about that. Very simple concept, but very effective, especially with samples. Okay, compressing velocities. So when we record something like this, well, those are the dynamics. With Cubase, you can just move down the expression or modulation, or you could compress it, as you can see. See, you're compressing it, where the peaks and valleys are not that big, right? Are closer together. And that's cool if sometimes you roll too much. We won't usually use that much here. Now, what happens if instead of long notes we are having staccatos, right? Like right? Now we don't have the same here. We can do the same thing. We cannot select that and compressing them, and we may wanna sort of compress. We may wanna not have the downbeats that loud, and the other notes we may wanna bring them, because if you realize those blue notes, you don't hear them that much. It doesn't sound. It sounds realistic, but it doesn't sound the way it should to me. And so, yeah, sure, you can select those and Control Shift and bring up the volume of those. But imagine having like a 30 seconds of that. Okay, really quick tip here: just select them all and compress the peaks and compress the valleys. Okay, so in Cubase it's Control Shift, and then you can bring up the volume, and with other sequences will be another way. But the concept is here: bring it up until you hit the peaks and bring them down a little bit, right? And then do the same thing with the valleys, with the lower velocities. We would bring those down. Okay, and now we will bring them up at the normal level. So what we got here is we kept the shape, but we compressed those. We brought those lower velocities and up, and the highest velocities we brought them down a little bit. Let's give it a listen. That's cool. Maybe here we want for towards the end we want a little bit more, right? But that's it, right? So you can apply this in a much longer cue, and it will really speed your process up. And no matter what sequencer you're using, you always can select and go up and compress the highs and go down and bring up the lows. In short, there are other ways in different sequencers where you can bring where through algorithms you can sort of compress the velocities. But hey, this is very simple. Just grab them, select them, compress up, down, and you're ready to go and work with every sequencer. I've seen this over and over again when I ask, what's your workflow? Okay, and usually, well, you can either go sequencer, score, and recording, or score, sequencer, and then recording. Usually when you go score sequencers, because there's not a recording session. And the reason for a score, like a score editor, okay, then sequencer, is because the reason is, the score editor allows me to see, when I'm orchestrating, it's just easier for me to see all the instruments. And that's right, it makes it easier, okay? Now, there are so many things that we will have to get rid of when we are exporting the MIDI from the score editor and importing it to our sequencer. There are so many MIDI information that we will need to get rid of, and or there's so much information like MIDI curves, etc. we have to redo in our sequencer in order for it to really sound human, like realistic, that it doesn't even, it's not, doesn't pay the price really. um, and there are like, you can mitigate that, and if you are like really into score editors, there are things like in Sibelius you can record the notes in Sibelius using your keyboard, and then quantize, like visually quantize the notes, but still keep the performance and stuff like that. And then when you export that MIDI information back to your, when you export it and to import it in your sequencer, it'll keep that recorded, that initial MIDI information where some notes weren't perfect. And that's cool because it feels more realistic. But still, here's the concept. When back in the days, a composer was a composer, and these days a composer is a composer, but also he's a they are musicians as well, because when you are composing these days, most, like 99% of the time, you will have to deliver deliver a mock-up, right? If you're like a concert music type of composer, then you'll do the score and you will go to rehearse and then you'll premiere the score, the concert day, then that's it. But if you are a composer for media, video games, films, TV, etc., you'll have that person who's called the producer, right, or the director, who's someone you have that will listen to your music and will say yes or no, okay? And so in order for them to say yes, you will have to produce something that sounds good, right? And the score editor these days won't sound that great. I mean, there's people making them sound really good, but still, the sequencer is designed for us to have the tools to make it sound as realistic as possible. We've got the tools there, and with a score editor, even though you may be able to make it sound really good, it'll just take so much more effort than doing it in the sequencer. Okay, so my recommendation is, if you are using the score editor first, so you've got the, so you can see all the score and all the notes and all the instruments, it's easy for you to see the orchestration there, it's totally fine. My recommendation here is, it's going to make a difference, just print the page and record everything in your sequencer. And again, as we saw in week 1, we would record the notes while moving the faders, or record the notes and then moving the expression modulation, maybe some vibrato as well. So we want to make sure that every line sounds as good as possible. Okay, so my message here is, again, this is what I've learned, or at least what I've seen happening to me. But my message here, my recommendation is, do not import the information from your score editor, but rather go ahead and re-record it. It's going to make a big difference, it's going to sound better. Generally, I don't recommend importing the MIDI information from your score editor to your sequencer. We've said that in another video. But there are some composers that prefer seeing the score, right? It's easier to orchestrate that way. And even sketching, it's easier, seeing the notes, because it'll allow us to see the harmony, or the different lines. It's easier to sketch there. You may have 3, 4, 5, 6 stuffs, and then you may have the different music ideas there and sketch it before orchestrating. The way I try to use this workflow in a sequencer is, we set in module 2 to have a sketching, right? The minimum setup that would allow us sketching ideas. So I always recommend, when it comes to start composing, starting with a sketch. And for sketching, we can either use the piano, or we can use the ensemble patches, either the orchestral ensemble as an ensemble patch, or the different ensembles like the strings or the brass and woodwinds, and then that would give us sort of a sketch. I usually use the piano, okay? and I will have 2 or 3 MIDI tracks, but those tracks are routed to the same paths. Actually, those 2 MIDI tracks, or sometimes I've got 3 or 4, they are routed to the same paths. Okay, I usually have 3 or 4 because then I will record the different musical ideas in different MIDI regions. Okay, so I may have the counterpoint in a second region. And by having different MIDI regions, it allows me to move those or copy those regions to different sections or to different instruments. Okay, so if I've got the counterpoint here, I may move it to the clarinets and oboes, right? And the melody for the high string or something like that. So what I'll do is I'll come here and I'll start improvising, like. And when you write for piano, try not to write too pianistic. That's too piano sort of thing, right? Try to write orchestral, right? Like. That's more orchestral. So we would set the tempo and then we could start with the melody, for example. Okay, we recorded that. And then what I would do is either I come to a second track here, MIDI track, which is routed to the same paths. So this is, let's say, piano 1, piano 2, piano 3, right? Different ideas. Let's just have another one, piano 4, okay? And come here, got this melody, and we can come to the piano 2, right? And it's a G, so then right, and then we could go and then we can go right. So we've got sort of the melody and the harmony here, and then we could go to piano 3 and we could record a counter melody maybe, and we don't need that anymore. Okay, so we have this here, maybe bringing down the volume of this one a little bit, and then the bass, which would be recorded here. Let's make this bigger. Okay, we've got it. So now what we would do is we've got this is melody, harmony, counterpoint, and bass. And what you want to do here is make sure that those regions start at the beginning of a bar. So when you copy and paste this, it stays in the same place. So I'm gonna paste this the bass to a track that I've got, which is cello and double bass in octaves. Okay. So this one I should get rid of because they're already playing in octaves. Okay, I'm not quantizing this much because it's legato, but we would record some dynamics here, right? Like something like that. Then we will get rid of the piano. Okay, that's it. And then we would bring the harmonies, maybe, right? Copy and paste for the sustained strings. We should come here and paste. We can just mute the double, the lows, and then we would come here and write the dynamics for the strings like this. Okay, record it, and then we could maybe bring, what I would do is bringing the melody with, let's copy the melody, let's bring it in here. Okay, let's merge these tracks, got the melody in here. And now what we are doing, we are recording the violins one on top of that melody. So we'll come here, I will select the violins one and the string so I can follow along the melody, which would go like, okay. 3. Okay, we have this as well, and finally we've got the counter melody. We should mute this one here and also that one. Cool. And finally we've got the counter melody, or maybe the high woodwind, something like that, playing it. Okay, let's record some dynamics here as well. Let's just make sure that's sort of in tempo. Okay, and maybe we can mute this one already. So too loud actually. Let's just come here. Okay, and that's it. We would actually, that just come here, let's blend this and merge it, and that's it. Let's see the whole thing. Let's get rid of these. You know what I would do here is bringing the a double bass that I use, that I like a lot, and just re-record it on top of, just to give it some more bottom end. I'm gonna record this here actually, this guy here, and I'm gonna have this so I can follow along again. And so it's gonna be G. Okay, so here we go. Okay, and here you would have the double bass. Maybe too loud here. We should bring this down a little bit. That's it. Okay. And maybe recording the cellos with this patch, which I move it, we could maybe get rid of the cellos and double basses that we recorded, and let's just have the cellos here and have them all open again. Double bass, so I can follow along with the cello, and it could go like, right, like. Here we've got the cello. Okay, so that's it. Let's give it a try. Maybe this one is going a bit too high in register. Okay, so that's about it. The reason why the double bass and the cellos are in the same octave is because the patch for the double basses, they sound down an octave. So it's a patch from, it's just like a sort of a custom patch that I reconfigured in Contact. So I just copy and paste from the cellos, and it already sounds on an octave. You can do this yourself, or just copy paste and then bring them down an octave, you know, like this. You could make them a little bit longer.